Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It has basically been a month since I last talked to you about books, so since that's a thing that I still do, here's everything that I read in March. It was a total of 5 books, and the first of which was Rick Riordan's The Red Pyramid, for all of you Percy Jackson fans out there. This is book 1 of the Kane Chronicles, which is the book series that is based off of Egyptian mythology rather than Greek and Roman. I read this one in physical copy, but I borrowed it from a friend, so I've had to give it back since then. And it is only a trilogy rather than his other series of 5. I will eventually get to the Magnus Chase books. I've had a couple people comment about them. I know about them. I know that they tie into the Percy Jackson books, but I'm waiting until the last book of the series comes out this year before I read the series, and also the Kane Chronicles came out a lot earlier. This is very Rick Riordan book 1-y. You can tell that he wrote it more in the beginning of his career rather than later in his career when he got better at doing book 1. It's not a great book 1, but it is still a Rick Riordan book, which means that it's got good characters, it's got a fun plot. Also, because this is Rick Riordan, you can tell that he definitely did his research into Egyptian mythology, and that part of the book is fun. And I also enjoyed the 2 main characters, who are a brother and sister pair who have lived apart for most of their lives. Sadie, the sister of the pair, has been living in London with their grandparents, and Carter, the brother of the pair, has been living with their father, who is a traveling archaeologist. And then there's magic and Egyptian gods and stuff. I mean, this is a Rick Riordan series. So I enjoyed the first book, even though there were a few things that were definitely a little bit silly, but I am definitely looking forward to reading the rest of the series. The next book that I read was on audiobook this time, and this is a book that got talked about, I think maybe 6 months to a year ago. I'm slow on reading things, we know this. And then they made a movie out of it, and so it was getting talked about. It was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This is a book that Patrick Ness wrote that was based off of an idea of a young adult author who had passed away young from cancer, and so she had sort of left this idea of a book behind, and he was tasked with finishing the story and writing his own version of it. This is a book that a lot of people found very difficult to read because it is dealing with the fear of the potential future loss of a parent due to, in this case, cancer, but you could extrapolate it to any major illness. And as someone who has actually lost a parent when they were still fairly young, although not nearly as young as the main character of this book is, he's about 13, 14, I think. There are always things that are going to be difficult for me to read when I'm reading about people who have lost their parents. If it's like the main focus of the book, that is often kind of difficult for me because I end up necessarily comparing it to my own experience, and, you know, then the similarities as well as the differences can cause different reactions. And so I find that some things are fairly universal, and then some things are very, very specific, and that's one of the things that can be kind of jarring to realize, that you might share certain things with this person who's experiencing this great loss, but because your situations were so different, a lot of the emotions that are happening are also very different. But it is essentially about trying to come to terms with that dread of losing someone and the, like, imminent loss. And because he is very young, it's very difficult for him to understand that these kinds of situations can produce really complex, difficult to hold simultaneous emotions, and how sometimes these emotions can even contradict each other, and some of them can feel really awful. And so, you know, all of that is difficult to read. It's about a boy and a magical tree that comes to life and tells some stories, and it's about the potential death of a parent. I would say that if you know what this book is, you know if you're the kind of person that should read it, because there are probably some people for which it would be a little bit too raw, and I totally get that, but, you know, if that sounds like the kind of thing that you want to read, then it was well written. And the audiobook as well is very well narrated, and the voice of the tree monster is really well dramatized, so if that's a thing that you're interested in, I recommend checking out the audiobook. So the next book that I want to talk about is the only one that I have a physical copy of. It is The Hanging Tree by Ben Aronovich. This is book 6 in the Rivers of London series. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this on this channel recently, although I'm not totally sure. Anyway, this is one of my favorite urban fantasy series. It takes place in modern-day London, featuring the apprentice wizard police constable Peter Grant, who got inducted into the basically wizard section of the Metropolitan Police in the very first book, and it has continued on his adventures through dealing with magical crime solving. And this one also deals a little bit more directly with the Faceless Man plot, if you have been reading this series, although it doesn't maybe do as much as you may want it to. So, as of right now, there is no official plan for how long this series is going to be, and I think you can maybe kind of tell that, but I'm still really enjoying what this series is, and so I'm willing to continue reading them for, a while. If it goes on for like 20 books, I might get tired, but, we're only on book 6, so I'm happy to keep going. So, I have 2 more that I wanted to talk about today. The first is another audiobook. I did the audiobook, which was a full cast dramatization of The Importance of Being Earnest, the play by Oscar Wilde. So this almost feels like cheating. This almost doesn't feel like it should count as a book because it kind of feels like I just watched a play because it was basically a live recording of the play. But it was great. It does have James Marsters as one of the main characters, if that is a thing of interest to you, like if you are a Buffy fan. And Oscar Wilde is just hilarious. Like, he is so sharp, and I mean, honestly, you don't get sent to prison unless you've pissed some people off, and he was incredibly satirical and very cutting, and also just hysterically funny. So I would definitely recommend checking this out, especially if you have not read the play or seen the movie, which also, you should probably see the movie, because it stars Colin Firth and Rupert Everett, and there's a lot of singing, and it's very delightful, and I really, really enjoyed the movie. Because it's a short play, it works really well as a movie, and so, yeah, I would recommend it. Go check it out. It's a good time. So, the final book that I read in March is one that you maybe wouldn't expect me to read, which is The Magnolia Story by Chip and Joanna Gaines. They are the stars of the HGTV show called Fixer Upper, and, I'm gonna come clean. I got really hooked on Fixer Upper, 6 months ago. I mainlined all the seasons. We've been following the new seasons, and I just thought it would be a good time. The audiobook is narrated by mostly Joanna with a few interjections of Chip Gaines, and they're just as delightful as they are in the show. And also, they tell the story of how they got started in it and how they had to really work together to build the business, and it's a very sweet story, and I really enjoyed it. They're not professional writers and they're not professional readers, and you can kind of tell in both the writing and in the audiobook narration, but honestly it's just so earnest that it's just so charming. So that was everything that I read in March. Before I sign off, I wanted to mention something that I'm doing now in the start of April, which is a Count of Monte Cristo Tumblr read-along, which is basically an attempt to read the entire book of Count of Monte Cristo, complete and unabridged, which, since it's about a 1,200-page book, is divided up into approximately 100 pages a week. It is running April through June, and I will link all the information down below. I'm really excited about it, and if that sounds like something that you would have fun doing, it's very low pressure. You can post however much and whenever you want to. So, I'll put all the links below, and you know what to do. But either way, I will see you guys soon with another video. Whether or not it's book-related is yet to be determined. Thanks for watching. Bye! And I also enjoyed the 2 main characters, which are Sadie and... oh crud, I've forgotten his name.